Om Utkramantam Stitam Vapi Bunjanam Vimuda Nanapashati Jnana Chakshushaha Om Shantihi Shantihi Shantihi. Deluded souls see him not, who arrives, stays, and departs, because he is conjoined with the veiling powers of nature. But those wise ones see him, who possess Jnana Chakshuhu, the third eye of wisdom. They see Brahman. So there shines Brahman. May Brahman protect us, may Brahman sustain us, and may Brahman illumine our thinking consciousness. May we not find fault with each other, with the world, and with the studies. And may what we study be a source of inspiration to us eternally. Om peace, peace, peace. May peace be unto us, and may peace be unto all. Om Hari Om, Hari Om, Hari Om Tat Sat. We are gathered here for, must be possibly a dozen, maybe the 12th or more, classes in this series on the Avadhut, in which we've been learning about his particularly unique state of mind. Say, probably beyond any kind of course of study that one might engage in when one attains such a state of mind, and maybe described differently by the lineage of the Avadhuts than, say, Samadhi is in Vedanta, or Asampragyata is in yoga, or Nirvana is in Buddhism. They have their own way of speaking of it. It's basically yogically oriented in the Avadhut. And there are also orders of female Avadhuts. There are different kinds of Avadhuts, just like there are different kinds of Paramahamsas. So we've been studying this particular one who's been earmarked by history by this unique revealed scripture called the Avadhuta Gita, in which we find a Chalisa hidden in there, 40 verses on the mental state or beyond mental states of the Avadhut. There, in the later chapters of the Avadhuta Gita, where he ends each refrain, Gyanamritam Samarasam Gagano Pamoham. So Gyanamritam, the nectar of Nondual wisdom, and Samarasam, this unique and ecstatic state of bliss, Samarasam, is an enjoyment that's beyond all other kinds of enjoyment. Rasam, sometimes they use that in India for how good the food tastes, because Indian food always tastes so good with the spices. So Samarasam, Sama of course means, places any Sanskrit word in an entirely different category than even Nir does, Nirvana, Nirbija, Nirvikalpa. It always infuses everything with the idea of exclusivity rather than taking away. Samarasam. And then Gagano is pretty much the air. It could be the ethers too. Aham, Samoham, Gagano, Pamoham. He says, I am like the ethers. That's the only way I can describe myself when I look around, having gotten rid of all the diseases that the world suffers from, which we'll look at today in a sobering look. If we want to describe the verse I'm about to sing for you, he says, I'm free of ignorance. That's all I can say. So we'd have to define ignorance to find out what it is that he is free of, that we're not, that's still plaguing us, despite our practices. Because contrary to what many people think about non-duality, it is based on practices, not just in the past, as the soul came out of the cloud of nations, as we were talking about Saturday's satsang yesterday, but also came forth from this dream of ignorance that it was having, this association with things that weren't real, Maya, samsara, this round of births and deaths that it was never really on, but which it was participating in, at least mentally, until it finally extracted itself from that. And he said all of this in the first, 27 verses we've looked at so far. And of course, we wouldn't even be past verse 10 yet if I had stopped and taken up every teaching that he gave us in each one of those verses or those slokas. So last week, I'm sorry, not last week, because this is an ongoing series. And last week we had a seminar on nirvana in the East as compared to salvation in the West, which is an interesting comparison we all got into. And then we had another 1 week lapse on another class subject prior to that. So it's been 3 weeks, or now 4, since we've put up that class that was which I couldn't even find today on my own website. I was looking around for where it's hidden, where it's hiding, so I could see where I left off, basically. But I found pretty much what I was looking for. We ended at verse 27. I was about to share with you harvesting the 6 limbs of yoga from, if you remember, coming off those series of teachings that he was giving us in verse 25, 26, and 27. If you're paying that close attention and through the week you're looking back and studying these things, then these things will make more sense to you and be more valuable. If you're just sort of cruising along on the samarasam, on the gagonal airs, ethers of the teachings, and just seeing where it leads you and enjoying it, samarasam, moment to moment, what the teachings are, that's good too. We can always make a study of these later, which is why we're appearing in front of you right now on a camera and on a computer screen, so that we can look back on these things at a time when maybe life makes it more convenient for us, and we have more time on our hands, or there's a deep urge, yearning, Sri Ramakrishna used to call it, that we do so, and verify and justify our existence both in this human body, this human form, in this difficult world, of where some 100 or more of our fellow men have just been exhumed in a fire over there in the next island. You've heard about that in Lahaina, where I used to actually give concerts as a musician under a big banyan tree with a symphony some 30 years ago or more. And the fire has taken out that beautiful little town of Lahaina. So we are sending money and sending food and so forth, trying to help the people there. That at the same time as Vedantas and yogis and yoginis, contemporary rishis, at least aspiring to be so. We know that kind of phenomena, whether you call it phenomena or calamity, if you call it phenomena, you're practicing your detachment. And if you call it a calamity, you're going, oh, how could that happen to such people? But we lean more towards the witness of phenomena, and then we don't necessarily play into the idea that when you're dead, that's it, it's all over. That's probably when it's beginning. It's when you were born that it was all over in Vedanta. That is, your relationship with Brahman ended when you were born, because you came through this curtain of nations, and for millions of people, that's an end to knowing their true nature. Isn't it obvious by looking around, or by checking into philosophy, by looking at the state of religion today, and by looking at the affairs of the world? So it was just those few, Krishna says in the Gita, because I chanted from the sloka, the Gita just now, Utkramam tam stiti vapi bhunjam. He veils himself with his own modes of nature, the gunas, and moves about that way. He arrives, he remains, he departs, and no one sees him unless this is open. And this, the Jnana Chakshu gift, has been given to you. That is, you've stepped forward and qualified yourself for it, and all of a sudden you had this experience of seeing through one eye instead of two, seeing everything non-dual instead of dual, or worse, because dualism isn't the worst thing that can happen to you by any means. So, in that way, we look at the Avadhut as a being who never loses sight of that divine nature. Call it Atman. We are Atman, all abiding. And so I was thinking about the Avadhut today as I was looking at these next 3 verses to present to you, because we'll have another at least 4 week lapse in these classes on the Avadhut and have to return again to him. Maybe that's good. We need a month to digest what he gives us, even in just 3 verses. But whatever the case, I was thinking there is the Avadhuta Gita, and that sort of, as I said, earmarks him as one of these great souls out of the Indian philosophies and history, because they're more than religion and philosophy. They're actually spirituality is there in India. That's what should have happened when true religion and non-dual philosophy get together. It should turn into spirituality. And so you're not seeing that happen very often. Or if it does happen, it happens to individuals who are themselves, like Krishna, rather hidden. You know, I'm hidden by my own modes of nature. I come and I go, but if they get the third eye, they'll recognize me. They'll see me in everything and everywhere, like seeing Brahman in all. So if we look at that one way in which we can find a great soul like the Avadhut, sort of unique to its following, because you don't hear about many of them. Maybe I just told you some facts about them that you didn't know, that there were several orders of them, like Paramahamsas, and there was female Avadhutas and things like that. Some of them go naked. They're called Nagas. So they'll just smear themselves in ash and walk about the earth. So there are different kinds. So this one's very unique, is that he kind of penetrated through to the surface. And these are probably things I should have all told you about 12 classes ago, but maybe it's good to come along now so we get to know him a little bit more familiar with him. And one of the ways which I've done that is to present him as the figure that appears in the Uddhava Gita. The Uddhava Gita is represents one of those 3 periods of Krishna's life where he was, a child, Gopala, a baby, and then a young man, a cowherd, playing with the cowherd boys. The next phase you see him in history, as far as we're concerned, in this later date, is as the teacher of Arjuna on the battlefield of Kurukshetra. Then flash forward as the king of Mathura, where he's appearing to you as the teacher of Uddhava. So Uddhava, they're out in the woods, and he comes up to Uddhava and he tells him, "I'm about to leave the body." And Uddhava says, "Take me with you, Lord. I've spent my whole life trying to find you. And now to hear that you're going is sobering news. There's nothing here on earth that I'd rather do, or no one I'd rather be with than thou. And you must stay behind," was the harsh news to come. "And where will I find you then after you leave the body? Will I lose you?" He said, "No, we're around a Dhuni fire right now. There's all these holy beings talking about Brahman. I'm in their hearts. So when I'm gone from the physical body, you just have holy communion with them, and I'll be there. You'll feel me in each one of them." So that's just a quick excerpt out of the Uddhava Gita that Krishna tells Uddhava, his precious student at that time. Arjuna's probably older and, righteously governing over all the affairs that happened when the Pandava clan got back into favor. Came out of the forest and took over lordship. So at this time, then, there was another mention, I'm just saying, of the Avadhut, and that was in the Uddhava Gita. So I looked for him in the Uddhava Gita 20, 25, 30 years ago. Whenever you see the copyright date on the Avadhut and his 24 Teachers in Nature, that had this cover on it. The Ramakrishna order liked this cover so much, they wrote me and asked me if they could put it on their Avadhuta Gita version. Some decades later, so that appeared there. So we were very happy to see that used again. But back when I put it out, and I had a creative computer artist I told her what I wanted, and she drew this. It was drawn out of the Avadhut Gita, out of the Uddhava Gita. And it was just a testament of some, 20, 30 verses that aren't the Chalisa, don't get that mixed up, of him relating how he took teachers in nature, the arrow maker, the child, even the courtesan, beings like that. There's 24 chapters I wrote around that bare mention of his teachers that turned into kind of what you could call maybe a spiritual novel, and can be read, taken up, and put you into that deep atmosphere of the Avadhut and what he got out of sitting and looking at a Brahmarakita beetle, for days till it finally moved, or what he got out of watching storks walk across a lake, for a long time till finally a crocodile snatched one of them. So he had all these experiences throughout his life that are bare mentions there. So I fattened it out into a story. So that's why I brought this for you to see, because you can see there that he's got some of those teachers. The deer was one, the elephant was one, the snake was one, the spider was one, the kite. Some of you might know the kite because the kite grabbed a fish out of the lake one day, tried to fly away, and the crows attacked it. And Avadhut was watching all this. And so the crows flew east, the hawk flew, the kite flew east, it flew west, it flew north, it flew south, always harried by these crows. Finally, it dropped the fish. Crows went after the fish and the kite was free. So you can imagine the kind of teaching that conveyed to the Avadhut, who watched the whole thing from yogic position on the ground by the lake. So the kite was probably one of the more famous of the teachings that might have even penetrated more out of Indian religion and into Western thinking. You heard maybe about that, the fish hawk or the kite. So all those are arrayed here, or many of them. I think we were playing with the children at one time saying, if you can find all of those in there, then you'll get a prize, you see. So you have to look deep to see, because he's got some hidden teachers in there that aren't necessarily noticed, like maybe Gaganopamaham, the sky, you see, and the stars. So in that way, then I wanted to give you another reference to the Avadhut that's there in the tradition, so that you'll be a little closer to him when you have his darshan in teaching. And so to start off this class, let's see if I can read to you. The quote from this chart. Okay. So the quote there is, there's one supreme essence called Paramatman. It is formless, but seekers of the formless often make this one mistake. They forget that it is also imbued with infinite power. Living beings, the universe, mind, intelligence, love, renunciation, knowledge, these are the manifestations of its power. Thus I accept not only Brahman, but also Maya, the universe and its living beings. So that's from the chart, teaching chart of the 6 complements of the Paramatman. On this chart, the quote is this: I, the Avadhut, roaming far and free, declare the truth. I have seen it shining in the eyes and hearts of the enlightened forest dwellers, simple villagers, roaming ascetics, and mountain yogis. nameless and formless, it permeates the entire creation. Pondering it, I have become like a child again, meditating in glades of forest deep, dancing blissfully around nocturnal fires, bathing in primordial waters, and singing heartfelt songs to God from snowy Himalayan heights. You'll find that at the back cover of this book, the Avadhut and its 24 Teachers in Nature. So starting off with that should be pretty much inspiring itself, but then I hope to inspire us more by singing these next 3 verses that are in our pathway here to meditate upon. Sandhyati kalarahitam nachame viyogo hyanta prabodharahitam radhiro namuka evam vikalpam rahitam nachabhava shuddham jnanamritam samarasam gaganopamoham nirnatanatarahitam hinirakulam vai nishchita chita vigatam hinirakulam vai samvidi sarva vigatam hinirakulam vai jnanamritam samarasam gaganopamoham kantara mandiramidam hikatam vadami samsita samshayamidam hikatam vadami evan nirantarasamam hinirakulam vai jnanamritam samarasam gaganopamoham. So verse 28, 29, and 30 out of 40. So you can see how we're proceeding along the study over mini class series to understand a little bit of what the Avadhut has to communicate to us. So the English translation just straight out for these 3 verses is this: sunrise in the morning, sunset at dusk. I see no real change taking place. Still, I am present to witness these variations. For me, all is melded into a singular truth, undifferentiated. Yet I am not deaf or dumb. I am just free from ignorance. I am pure existence, wisdom, and bliss, as boundless as the sky, infinite like space. The many perplexities of life suffered by others, I have mastered. Yet I am not a master, nor in need of a master. After mind became my slave, it dissolved and ceased to function normally. All dualities then ceased for me, and I became pure existence, wisdom, and bliss, as boundless as the sky and infinite like space. Brahman requires no proving, stymies all doubts. Forests and streams, mountains and temples are incomparable to it. With a single eye, one will see it pervading everything, pure, unaffected, ever stationary. And I am that, pure existence, wisdom and bliss, as boundless as the sky and infinite like space. Jnanamritam samorasam gaganopamoham is refrain after every one of those 40 verses. So even though that's a repetition that he wants you to think about in terms of transcendent reality, what your true nature is, stripped of all sorts of overlays, not just sufferings, but things that are pleasurable, stripped of those too. You can't get to a non-dual state unless you, as Krishna said in the Gita, his words being right there again, that the opening of the third eye, I have a single eye now. So you won't be able to get to that witness state that he's sitting in, viewing all of nature and changes from element earth all the way up to the ethers. Because he's, of course, born in India, he knows that there's something beyond air, and there's something beyond physical ether. There's actually 4 more kinds of ethers inside of him, kingdoms of heaven within you, many chambers of the Father's mansion, where many beings exist, and where all of these 6 transformations of birth, growth, disease, old age, decay, and death all go away. Those are the things that he says there. I do not suffer like others. I've mastered that. And so he can detach himself from that. Basically, the detachment comes from not believing in change. We talked about that at the difference between the Eastern's nirvana and the Western salvation in those 2 forms of religion. We talked about that last week, about how belief in change is really the difference. Same between those 2 in science. Science believes so much in change, transformation, but that's called parinama in India. And aparinama is what he has. He doesn't believe in anything that changes, whether he can see it or not. So he can see transformations going on in nature. He can see feel transformations going on in the emotional body, and he can detect or surmise or intuit salutations going on in his mind, ego, intellect complex. None of that's going to satisfy him. So then you get down to one of my old warhorse charts, which I'm not going to go into deeply today, but there's a whole book on it. In fact, 2 days ago, I gave that book to a man here on the Big Island who was suffering bereavement and disbelief at some calamities he'd gone through, including Maui, Lahaina, and some of the people who passed there. So I handed him that book and I said, you're not a particularly religious person. You don't go by deities. You don't believe or not believe. I think this book will help you. Just dissolve the mind back into the source, whatever the source might be. You can think of it right now as Gaganopamoham if you want, because that's not a name that you're used to. It's not a god, although there's probably is a god of the ethers and of air and of water and of earth, if you want to see it that way. Those part of the elemental beings and the devas and devis. But that's for a person who has that eye opened inwardly towards some of these peripheries, some of these strata of consciousness. We've studied the strata enough and found gold, diamonds, and that kind of what we're after when we're looking for strata, except maybe for some old fossils, which then caused us to believe that maybe we evolved, you see. But the Avadhuts, again, that's parinama. Evolution is movement, and the only movement I want to make from the place I'm at right now is in. Not evolution, involution. I've come enough far out. It's far out, man, too far out. And now I want to go back into my source. And I don't necessarily have to have a name for it. I just have to know it exists, and that's enough for me right now. One of the name of our God blogs last week. So if you hear the words from the ancient rishis and so forth, then you'll have this inkling or this memory, divine memory, daiva smriti, come back to you, say, there's the truth. It's been hiding for me for the past look at a calendar here, the past 16 years. Or in Shankar's case, the past 8 years, you see. Jesus' years, for the last 14 years, since I became about my Father's business. Woke up from that dream of family life and so forth. So all of this to say then is that there are systems that are ancient, Adi Daiva, they're original systems of human thinking. The first humans of a Mahayuga, you see, not humans in evolution back to some old fossils where you have to go to a zoo to meet your ancestors, you see, not those kinds of ancestors. The Indian ancestors go inside to the source, back to the father of the gods, back to Ishvara, back to Swayambhuva, back to the sun god, back to Krishna himself, back to Lord Shiva. These are where they trace their ancestors. You have to understand that they're doing this in meditation through generations. So they have as strong a history, or stronger than you have as a scientist, or as a psychiatrist, or as a human being attached to matter. Because, if you were those old fossils, then that would at least prove rebirth, wouldn't it? So it's not taking you in that direction. You see, it's always where I came from was within. And you can use the outer, for metaphors and so forth. I'm the infinite sky. I'm like that. What can I tell you? I can't show you what's in my heart and what's in my mind, the non-dual part of my mind. But I can show you what it's like out here, because this is just a reflection of that. Purnamadaha, Purnamidam, Purnam, so forth. So if we look at what the Avadhut has done, and probably what all beings have done who have gone back to the source, then basically they would have had to accepted that they were born in a body on earth. At least they were associating with a body on earth. In the case of a great avatar or a great soul, they find themselves here, and they know it takes them a little while, because they came through the curtain of nescience too, when they took a body, to remember their mission, to remember their purpose for coming, because it wasn't for enjoyment. And Holy Mother used to say that. The Master and I and our devotees have not come here for enjoyment. We know how precious it is to get a human body. So they've come here, to show you have a precious human body from which you can, like the Avadhut sitting there, can view the interior of consciousness, not just the exterior. You can even view the anterior instead of the exterior and the interior of consciousness. If you sit like this, breathe, calm your mind, and concentrate. Right now I'm writing a chapter in one of the new books called The 6 Types of Concentration in Vedantic Yoga. So you've heard of dharana, one of the limbs of yoga. Well, you take that into Vedanta and you've got 6 different types of concentration to study there. That's how important concentration is to spiritual life. So it's a real focus. It's a laser-like focus. And it doesn't focus outwards on things that change. It only focuses inward toward the changeless. It's got a goal. It's got an ultimate goal. Paragatam, Buddha called that. Gatam. There are goals and goals, but then there's the Paragatam. Follow me, I'll show you that. So if you take Sri Ramakrishna's word for him, I'm sort of paraphrasing him here. When a sugar cube dissolves into hot liquid, it breaks into half, then into small chunks, then into granules. Finally, there's nothing left but sweet liquid. Similarly, when the mind moves towards authentic meditation, it first contemplates the dual world. That's when the sugar cube breaks in half. Then the many teachings, then living particles of its own intelligence, and finally enters into full immersion. What remains then is the blissful, indivisible, homogeneous mass of pure conscious awareness, which is putting together 5 very nice English words, but how powerful is that? And that's a great English mantra for you right there. So that's the description Sri Ramakrishna used to talk about when you involve and take everything that you have considered to be real, maybe for lifetimes, and you're rather focused on that, if not attached to it, if not obsessed with it, and you've never seen what it really is that attracts you in it. It can't fulfill you in the end, as we're told. So what you would do then is, from Earth, you would take up the 5 elements, and those are 5 types of concentration. You would look to that. The 6th type of concentration is Vedanta, is to give it all back to Lord Shiva, so or Lord Brahma, as the case may be. So you're supposed to align all of this with your body, different parts of your body, and then align all of that with your senses. You've got 5 senses that are motor, that are exterior, like procreation and locomotion. Those are kinds of senses. Then you've got 5 senses that are subtle. Seeing, hearing are the most subtle. And then now you've got, some 15 things there that you've just looked at. So you dissolve that. So right now, if you're doing this practice, you've already cut or broken that sugar cube in half, you see. And things are beginning to turn into separate particles. Not particles of living intelligence yet. That's going to happen when you get to the Antakarana and beyond. But this saturation practice is happening, and you're already beginning to taste a little of that sweet liquid of consciousness that was hidden behind the solidifying powers of nature. See? Objects, they got in the way of you seeing Brahman. An interesting way of looking at things, isn't it? Because to most people, they want those objects. To them, they are Brahman, although they don't have a word for it or can't explain it. To them, those objects are as essential or more essential than anything that's unseen, unheard, untold, unbelievable. It is unbelievable that they think that way. So this is an involution process, and it's breaking down the external things, which our Avadhut here is doing when he sits and thinks about, sees elephants and sees alligators and sees sky and sees God, the goddess, and sees a child. See, these things, he's breaking their objectivity apart, you see, and looking at their essence. And he's not doing it the way a doctor would. Oh, let's look into the body and see, what fluid essences are there, you see, or let's, like a scientist would, let's look into an object and see what atomic particles and molecules are there. Because that's all outer change, and it's obvious it changes more and more and more. What else? It gets sick and doesn't heal. In medicine, it doesn't heal ever. It's destined to die and decay. That's built into its package. So the best doctor would be, of course, a detached doctor, and the best scientist would be one that sees the particles and say, those are too fast for me to comprehend. What are they based upon? They're based upon an unchanging backdrop, which is consciousness itself. Just like biologists would put a nice little slide of a drop of liquid under the microscope and see all the life forms there, and see what happens to them when I add this or take this away, or how long a life do they have, how do they move, and will they cause disease, or will they be able to prevent disease with them? All of these things are of outer interest to people who are using the senses in an external way, but this is an internal process. So you take it back to the essence of your senses. I mean, people usually go, smell that good Indian food. Samarasa time, you see. Smell that good Indian food. And nobody ever thinks about the faculty of smelling and how it's connected to the mind, and what smell is and what aroma is and where the source of that is. I smell it, I like it, and I go to it and I get it. And I satisfy myself with it for a little while. And then the next scent comes along. Maybe that one's not going to be quite as nice. Well, I stepped in something, you know what I mean? So basically, you've got this power of the senses to do what they do, power of the eyes to see, power of the ears to hear, power of the senses to feel. And nobody looks that deep or that subtle. What is that? And when they do, they think, I have to assign that to some kind of god. The god of sight. The sun might be a good person to take for that. Narayan, Surya, Narayan. Or a god of feeling, you see. So when they do, or if they can go that far, then the next thing they would be dividing everything back into would be this life force, which helps you feel, taste, touch, hear, and smell. This is so well gradated from growth to subtle. Here you are, right, in the ocean of Brahman. How you got here, I'm not going to go into right now. I'm just right now using the Avadhut as an example of how somebody took a body on earth for a purpose, for a grand purpose. And he wants to share that with you, and he's singing about it to you. So I'll go that far with it. As far as the other billions of souls who are in different worlds, some of them right there inside of these pranas and so forth, and inside of the mind, we're not going to go there right now in this series of classes. We're saying that here, you're proceeding from here. This is where you start, and this is where you go if you believe in involution and non-change. If you believe in evolution and constant change, you're pretty happy right here for how many lifetimes you want to take, tasting, touching, hearing, smelling unreal things, having dreams. They call that. It's having endless dreams. So if you do the work, these 5 pranas, which are causing you to do everything from think to wave your arm to speak, then you dissolve them back into the fourfold mind. About that time, you found the origin of everything external. Everything in the realm of Prakriti, and at least half of unmanifested Prakriti, starts in the mind and goes outward. And then from there, the mind, it's fourfold mind, ego, that's your sense of individuality, your thoughts, chitta, your ego, ahamkara, and your buddhi, your intelligence, is there lodged in this compartment. It's a very powerful little critter, and the ego is in charge most of the time. When the intelligence gets in charge, that's different. Then you have some forward motion, some productivity going on, instead of counterproductivity. Where to go once you've seen your own mind? Into the God's mind, called the Mahat. And you can see all the beautiful things there. All the sources to things there would be called projection, sustenance, dissolution, time and space, and all pervasiveness. So now you're using words that most people are not going to find in school when they're kids, or in high school, or even in college in the West. What do you mean by these things? I mean, the mind projects things, and that's how objects happened. Well, I thought objects came out of nature, and nature started with a Big Bang, and pretty soon, yada, yada, yada. No, we're teaching the mind-only schools now. We're teaching the origin of something. And we're leading you towards something that's unoriginated, but we won't tell you that yet. That'll shock you too much, and you won't be able to focus on doing the dissolution process like you should to the end, till you find out your sugar cube is actually sweet liquid and not a body-mind mechanism. And you could put other words with that. You see, so earth is at this level of God's mind is called solidity. It's actually a power to solidify things in the mind that makes things solid later. And that liquidity is water later. The thought liquidity is water later. The thought luminosity is light or sunlight later. The thought homogeneity is gagano pamoham, is ether later. And it's all full of samarasam when I see it from God's mind instead of my individual mind ego complex. See, now I'm seeing it the way God sees it. I'm seeing the ultimate power of perception and not just perceiving externals. It's a quick jump I'm taking you through in this chart because we want to go on, but sometime after you find the Mahat, and like the Rishi in the Upanishad said, you have a beautiful set of worlds out there. Can you let me past them now? I'm through with them. I've had my bath. I'm clean. had my bath, I'm clean. I don't want to go back to any more transformative things that are going to require purification or require liquidation. I just want to go on to my true nature, please. So Lord Brahma, or the Trinity, lets you into the secret of the Prakasha Shakti, the revelatory power, and her word. And then from there, you see your true nature. I am Atman, all abiding. It's just like saying, Yanamritam samarasam gaganopamaham. I am that. You'd say Salvidam Kavidam Brahma. Can you give it to me in less syllables? How about Tattvamasi? I'm just a simple man, sir. Can you give it to me in less syllables? Yes, how about Aham Brahmasmi? That's still two. I just don't like to think in terms of many. Give it to me in one syllable. Sarvosmi. Now I got it. God is everything. Sarva, it's all. It's everything. Now I can go in samadhi with that one word. That one word then becomes the hub of everything. Even the Trinity is hub there, and it's presided over by the Mahashakti, the Divine Mother of all the worlds, which you just got into and decided to hand back to her. And then there's the ocean of Brahman that she's swimming in. Can I go swim there, Mother? So you dissolve the rest of your intelligent particles into the vast, boundless, deep, sweet liquid of pure conscious awareness. The quote here says, the classic and comprehensive meditation in yoga and Vedanta dissolves the elements into the senses, senses into the subtle elements into the prana, prana into the mind, mind into the great mind into the word, Om. And then find Om in your own self. The Atman, find it in your own self. It must be obvious or evident by now because it wasn't out there in the sounds that you heard. And then when you find the self, you'll find that self is, always will, and always was to be in the ocean of Brahman. Non-different, inseparable, one. Indivisible awareness. So go back in Footfalls, the book we put out, and look at the dissolution of the mind stream and practice it. You can do this dissolution in 5 minutes. You know, use it as a guide. Now I'm dissolving this, now I'm dissolving that, now I'm dissolving that. Am I really dissolving it? Probably not, but I'm making a start. Because when it becomes imprinted on your mind's memory, and then you dissolve it there, that's when you're dissolving it in the mind. Till then, you're just, you're not faking it, but you're practicing it, see? And then pretty soon you'll find you start to be rid of your attachment to fire, or maybe your fear of fire, or because you drowned in another lifetime, you're free of your fear of water all of a sudden because you dissolved water back into its source, you see, its senses back into the prana and so forth. How could it exist anymore when you took away its foundation? You have to take away the foundation of things that bother you for them to cease existing. Sri Ramakrishna said, you know, you prick yourself on this bush outside in your yard. Every time you go out there, it seems to prick you somehow. So it won't do just to get up to the bush and say, burn, bush, burn. You have to go get gasoline, a light, pour it on the bush, burn the thing to the ground, and it'll never prick you again. He's talking about getting rid of these fears and these attachments and these things which would cause a problem like this. In order to use our time wisely and quickly for these short classes, let's go look at some of the things the Avadhut is free of. Because remember, he said, I'm free of ignorance. And he also says, I've had my third eye opened. So both of those things, I doubt that we'll be able to have enough time to go through. But we will have something to base our next class on when we meet for it in some month or so after our visit to Portland in this next couple of weeks, the ashram there. We can start this out because we were doing this as right after the dissolution of the mind stream, I could say that if you wanted to connect some of these things that we're going to look at to some of these things, it's not going to be that hard, because you can't really look at something outside and say, where is its source? Like my fear. If you see, I won't go near the ocean. I lived my whole life away from the ocean. I'm not going there to surf in it or immerse myself in it or have fun in it or anything. I'm deathly scared of it, drowning. So I never lived near the ocean. I'll never go near it. Too much water for me, thank you very much. So where's the source of your fear? It's in the water. Where's the water? It's in your mind. It's the thought water. And until you make that inward evolution and dissolution along the way, then you're always going to be fear of water, be afraid of water and drowning. In the next lifetime, you won't have gotten rid of that impression in your mind. And the same thing is true of positive things. If you have something that you've attained through your practices and you're holding that, then you come into your next lifetime with that as a positive attribute to your existence, and it supports you. It ennobles you. So, but he's talking about free of ignorance that put him into samarasam, and the Gyanamritam that did it. His wisdom got rid of these problems that put him into this state of awareness. It's so simple, but you have to find out what the things are, then get the tools from the gurus and so forth, do the practice, and then have the experience. That puts it in a little bit more in your court. You have to make some concerted effort, as they say, around it. Sri Ramakrishna used, for these kinds of problems, Sri Ramakrishna used the hospital of the world. So I found a hospital, I put an emergency, photoshopped in an emergency room down there, because this is where most souls are running for right now. They've suffered this so much that they have to go to the emergency room now. And some people are maybe looking to get out. If you find the doctor is Ishvara, the staff are rishis, and the healers are the gurus, you see. So they're at the upper end of this hospital, and you hardly ever see them. You're trapped in these little rooms down here. You might see a few minor officials or a nurse or something, or a bedpan cleaner. You're not going to get very high up in your ability to get out of the hospital, which is what you want. Nobody likes to be laying there with all that sound and that vibration and so forth. So this is why Sri Ramakrishna puts it so humorously, really. He says, you may think that everything is going to be over. That is, means okay. It's all going to be okay, they say. But God will not release you as long as the slightest trace of your illness is left in you. You simply cannot leave the hospital if your name is registered there. As long as the illness is not perfectly cured, the doctor won't give you a permit to leave. Why did you register your name in the hospital at all in the first place? So he leaves the back door open, so he says, there is a way never to come here to this earth again. If all you know is life on earth, well, that's the predicament you've come to, is that you came here without knowing how you got here. You don't know how to get out, and you're satisfied being in. That is, you're going to be satisfied with solid objects and birth, growth, disease, old age, decay, and death, and those things. And they're going to be part of life. You're going to start saying that, oh, it's just part of life, you see. 100 people that died in the fire there across the channel, last week. Oh, that's just part of life, and it'll never happen to me, maybe happen to my friends. But it comes knocking on your door closer and closer as your body ages, and as you make decisions which aren't good for your physical, energetical, mental, psychological, religious, philosophical, and spiritual life. You're a six-fold package there. And you should always be about keeping health at all levels. You see, then you won't be signing into the hospital and then forget that you signed in and never be able to see the doctor. You see. Or maybe you'll meet six doctors. Like the person I've been talking to recently. You see, how many gurus can you have? See, and they're all teaching you in a little bit different style. So I think maybe I'll just make a hodgepodge of that and get along as best I can. But I'm still not seeing the doctor, and I'm still not getting out of the hospital of the world. Where's my moksha? Where's my liberation? Where's the Divine Mother? Where's my enlightenment? So Sri Ramakrishna puts that in very good perspective here. Don't sign in the first place, but Avadhut can say that. Most of us can't. But Sri Ramakrishna can always also say that, if you want to prove yourself worthy of being released, and the doctor will release you from this hospital, then you will do the practice. This doesn't take long, but it's not a happy road to study. So what are some of the diseases here? I had fun filling in these windows in a way. The disease of violence would be at the very bottom of the hospital. That's called himsa, but we practice ahimsa. It's the first tenet of yoga, ahimsa, to be nonviolent in thought, word, and deed. Enough said. Then there's the disease of warmongering. So this world is full of wars and fighting. And it's always been the same. It's not just between governments, not just between cultures, not just between people. It's even between religions. It's not even between many religions. One religion can split itself into factions, like Protestants and the Catholics, and go to war for several hundred years, killing each other. And they're supposed to be following the same savior. So this is warmongering, and people make a living off it after that, and then they start being born in the military. I was a general last time, I'll be a general this time. But generally, I'm violent. See? And I'm living on violence, and that's causing suffering to others, and that's karma. Pretty soon, I hope to drop a huge bomb to kill hundreds and thousands of people in my next lifetime. Because I discovered through my scientists, the inventions of the scientists should never be given to the politicians. Who said that? My teacher, Swami Sheshanandaji Maharaj, peace and bliss be for him. The inventions of the sciences, your scientists, you call them in the West, should never be given to the politicians and the military. Just see what they do with them. If you want them just for your own pleasure, he's probably above that too. So is the Avadhut. But nonetheless, it's not going to cause violence necessarily to people. Enough said. Disease of evil doing and immorality. Those three at the bottom rung are my picks. You go ahead, erase those with Photoshop, put in your own, print it, put it on your wall, and live by it. You see, have your own chart of it. In the next floor, the diseases of the body. We talked about that already. The disease of forgetfulness, I would put in there really quickly. That is smriti hetu. I mean, I don't remember myself. I don't remember where I came from. I don't remember who I truly am. I don't recognize my family when I'm born. I don't know where I'm going. I can't recognize God. I have a true nature. I can't remember it. How many things are there out there that you don't remember? So this forgetfulness has to be nipped at the bud. You have to start practicing conscious remembrance of everything, from the recognition of God in all things to your own divine nature. Should we go back and lead you through it, one way to get to it? How to dissolve things that are in the way of it, and how to, as you dissolve them, what will come forward in your memory when you get rid of the things that are brooding about, that you're hurting over, that you're suffering from, that you're miserable about. When I can finally get those things successfully, get thee behind me, as Jesus said, then all of a sudden, all the things that I truly am and all the good qualities will come rushing forward at me. That's called Dharma Mega Samadhi in Buddhism and Vedanta and yoga, all three, is that you have a sort of rain cloud of virtues that pours out of the open sky of awareness. Only when you get these things out of the way that you're inhibited by by your own doing, but not would say, not by a devil or by a god or somebody in their way. This has all been placed there. It's self-actuated. Nice phrase in English. All of this is self-actuated. So it can be self-unactuated. It can be done away with, the Avadhut says, because he's in that state. Diseases of the body, disease of forgetfulness, and then, of course, Sri Ramakrishna's observance, the disease of worldliness. That is, can't think of anything else but the world, and I forgot about spirituality, about God, about true religion, about higher philosophy. None of those things seem to interest me anymore, see, so it's just the world for me, thank you very much. I know a lot about wines. I can tell you about those. Next level, as we go up the hospital toward hopefully meeting the doctor, the disease of materialism and greed. Even without greed, materialism isn't that high a rung, is it? It doesn't take you very high to be attached to matter or to be relying on matter. The disease of irreligion and irreverence. You know, if you had words to put in, and you could put, I'm going to put in pride here. Irreverence is a kind of pride that you depend only upon yourself, but yourself doesn't know anything really, except how to get itself into trouble. And then it has to go to a savior to get itself free of trouble. But then it, as you'll see up here, the disease of betraying path and guru. And that's quite a way along the way up the floors, because by then you had actually received the grace of a teacher. You've been given a good chance, and that guru had shown you teachings that would get you to Brahman. But somehow, you know, along the way, then you bailed out before the sunrise broke through the clouds. So the disease of domination, you know, might as well just kind of put it with war and warmongering, but there's a kind of domination that happens ego over ego rather than just country over country. That, you know, people like to put each other under each other's spell and power, from excuses everywhere, from things like love or so-called love, to just the desire to manipulate just for the thrill of it. So basically you have this power of domination. There's a kind of disease in people. You can see it on TV. Just turn on the TV, which I never do, I don't have one, but when we grew up with it through the 50s and 60s and 70s, then you could see it fomenting there in TV shows. Sri Ramakrishna liked to use the word clever. These are people that were clever in using their power over others. Next floor, disease of racism. Probably most of us can understand that. That's one of the things we'd all like to see disappear. And it's tried to disappear many times, but it always dances back in one form or another. You might see, get over it in one country, it comes to another. Get over in one state, it moves across to the other states. Pretty soon, you know, it's the poor black person who's being made slaves. Then pretty soon, if you're Asian looking, then you get discriminated against. It just pops up anywhere, whenever it wants. And people talk about how they want to get rid of it, but then there it is again, coming up. So that's a disease that we'd all like to see just disappear. If it doesn't disappear in your politicians, then how's it going to disappear in your country? Let's put it that way. Because if you can make money on anything, of course, then it's probably good. You know, immorality. It's probably good to get rid of it, but I don't want to because I can make money off it. So there's the person who thinks they're moral, but is really immoral. And they're going to church the next day, washing their sins away with holy water, but it doesn't change their interior mind at all about it. We talked about that last week at our seminar. The diseases of apathy and complacency. Okay, now you're getting more into less of the problem of violence and more of the problem of prevarication. So I know the truth, but I'm too lazy to go after it. I had a chance to awaken in this life, but I think I'll just wait. I'll get it later. That's one of the excuses people make about enlightenment or even salvation. It'll come to me through God's grace when it's time. But Holy Mother said, death, time and death, they don't hold office hours. They don't hold office hours. You never know when those are going to strike. So when you have the opportunity to awaken, particularly spiritually, we say, then you should take that and run with it. Run with it to the goal. The disease of fault finding. We're now getting into some of Holy Mother's favorite problems, fault finding. If we could do away from that backstabbing and fault finding and criticism of each other, then a lot of lower things would be dissolved. A lot of higher things would come into focus. The disease of family, spouse, and job. Probably a lot of people would object to that, but the next day you'll find them complaining about them, all three of them. So it's not like somebody has fealty to their family and to the workplace and to job and to the money that comes from it and all of that, but doesn't mean they're going to stop complaining about those things, because the nature of those things, it's called the Ashanatraya in Tantra. And these are three bondages, three chains that bind you into a lower level of life and thinking. So you're going to have to do them dharmically, is how they say in India. Find a way of offering them up, doing them dharmically, so that they won't bind you anymore. The disease of personality worship, from politics again into religion, into the realm of the gods, into the realm of the gurus, you've got this problem now spreading out. In my profession, if you can call it that, because I hate to take it into that level, but there are so many gurus there that are teaching that should be sitting quietly and listening to truer souls, like Sri Ramakrishna and Swami Vivekananda, and who themselves didn't like personality worship whatsoever. They wouldn't allow it in their case. So one has to go toward the impersonal along the path. The doctor up here, Ishvara, he's barely a person himself. He's just so connected to Brahman, the ultimate, which is the sky around here. You see this word here, moksha, is it? Moksha. That's outside the hospital. That's like Gagano Pamaham. That's the air, that's the ether around this institution. It even transcends Ishvara. So Ishvara's got his, or Ishvari, her, unlimited consciousness focused here in how to get people free, and probably saying to themselves, I sure wish I didn't have this job. Did Christ like that job? Did Buddha like that job? I'm waiting to step into the land of moksha, just to be liberated, be free of all these problems that happen in this whole hospital of disease. You could make this word plural, the hospital of the worlds, in the opinion of some. The disease of religious narrowness. Don't get me started on that one, because Sri Ramakrishna, our great guru, is the paragon of universal harmony. We've talked about that a lot in our recent seminars and teachings, how all religions came and were grounded in him, and you can't find anyone in the world's history that brought forth that great ideal of universality and then actually practiced it and had results from it. and went into samadhis that hadn't been seen by the Brahmin priests ever, what to speak of for 100 years, hundreds of years. So this is a person who was the epitome of the word Catholic with a capital C. It was totally universal and open to everyone. And he wasn't just the color of the chameleon as it changed. He was the whole chameleon itself. He wasn't just the parts of the elephant that the blind men were feeling. He was the entire elephant, plus the blind men who were looking. So this is our great teacher, Sri Ramakrishna Paramahamsa, the great avatar of the Kali Yuga. So that would be one way to get beyond religious narrowness. If you want to get beyond things that are hiding from you, fear of whatever in your mind, you start dissolving, and just keep that up the rest of your life, dissolving things that are of immaterial, pun intended, and also that are of little matter to you, of little merit. There's no reason to be thinking about them. Why let them bind you? And just get free of them, step by step that way until you, oh, that one's finally gone. One song in India says, I woke up one day and my ignorance was gone, utterly gone. And then he said, how do I put this? Well, how about this way? Who can veil that truth I've just seen? It'd be like trying to tie a fire in a cotton cloth. That's how ignorance, would just be burned away in a thrice, in an instant like that, when you dissolved everything at least enough to let this great light in and to completely dissipate the darkness of the anatman, of the finite soul, the ego soul. Well, we're up to the top floor here, almost. The disease of ancestor worship. You'd have to go to Lord Buddha in order to make sense out of that, because that's what's getting you on the Kala chakra, the wheel of birth and death, and it's hard to get off of. So, this, you draw a circle around this and say, we're all merrily on the Kala chakra right now, circling, ignorant of even being bound, most people. There's no such thing as bondage or liberation to materialistic people, because they don't think in those terms. You have to start feeling the press of dualities, suffer from them to realize that there are dualities, and then maybe there's a third way of getting above them. Then maybe you become a seeker. But that's what this is heading for, choose the disease of heaven seeking. We talked about that last week, the difference between nirvana and salvation, difference between heaven and hell in one particular tradition, religious tradition, as put next to karma and reincarnation, karma and getting free, liberation. That you realize that this is all done by me, I can undo it, and then all of a sudden my ignorance is gone, utterly gone. And I feel it, you see. Avadhut's feeling it, isn't he? I mean, he's singing to us over these last series of dozen classes or more. We should by now think, this guy's free. He's just totally free. And how many ways does he have to say it? And then at the last verses, he stops saying, I am, pure consciousness, existence, and bliss, like the sky. Then he starts saying, you are pure consciousness and bliss, like the sky. The last few verses, he changes, lends himself to us, lends his enlightenment to our search for enlightenment so that we'll waken up. The disease of rebirth and ignorance. We talked about that already. That remembrance is so important. So if you remember something about yourself, don't let it go. Focus on it. Believe in it. That's tinder for the fire of realization. And don't let anyone tell you otherwise. It's because everyone from parents, upbringing, family, spouse, and job, will tell you that's not right thinking. You're wrong. Then go to a therapist. They'll also tell you that and charge you a healthy fee for it. And then on and on. You won't find anyone. Don't you know that everyone's lost here? Everyone lives in pallid imitation of everyone else. Ramaprasad sings in his songs. You have to go to some specialist. It's up here. You're heading toward a higher floor. Quick, while the nurses aren't looking, run down the hall, get in the elevator, go to the next floor. As you do, dissolve everything along the way. Don't look back. Then this penultimate floor, the disease of neglecting sadhana. I put it up high because I believe strongly in it, and so did our great teachers, Sri Ramakrishna, Holy Mother. Do more sadhana, she said, do more sadhana. And Swami Vivekananda, and Krishna in the Uddhava Gita that we just mentioned at the beginning of the class, he's telling Uddhava, the Lord really loves those who, by their own self-effort, get free, rather than, say, waiting for grace or waiting on time and death, post-mortem emancipation, those kinds of things. Krishna tells Uddhava, the Lord really appreciates and loves those who put an effort forth to get free. They like to see you get free on your own merit, on this wisdom that you're being given. Take it seriously, and one day apply it like some sort of nepenthe or some sort of great healing ointment that's hidden up here in one of these rooms that you come upon one day. Oh, this will get rid of that rash. See, oh, worldliness just disappeared. And next to it, of course, the disease of betraying path and guru. You can go to gurus and they'll tell you all about that. I think the ones who don't care if you betray them, that kind of tells you what they're made of. It's those ones that say, oh, why are you doing this? So unfortunate. As Holy Mother said, your whole success to your spiritual life depends upon your guru. So you must keep a very good relationship with him or her. And those that don't, later on, they'll have to come back and ingratiate themselves to him again, as they turned away from that person and didn't recognize what they had. And it's another name for it is the disease of giving up on the goal. So again, you would have to know what the goal is. Gatam, Gatam, Paragatam. These kinds of things, I mean, the mention of sadhana and what's coming are the evolution, forgive the word so I don't confuse you, but are the evolution, which is an involution into your source. At some point you stopped and turned away from the path of the world. You divorced yourself from the world, you renounced it, and you stepped into Mother's 3 cities, Tripura Sundari, and she said, Mother, you guide me from now on. They're all living in pallid imitation of each other. I don't want that anymore. I've been betrayed by them, see? So I'm not going to betray you. And so then you'll reach this pharmacy of Dharma teachings. I put it in a different color, the font even, the text. The Office of Signed Release Forms and the Injections of Atma Gyan Serum. That I got from Swami Sheshanandaji Maharaj. The West needs an injection of Brahma Gyan, and I'm here to give it, he said. So we were there sticking out our arms. At that point, we'd been with him enough years to know there's an Avadhut standing before us. There's a Jivan Mukta up there. There's a Rishi from ancient India. There's a realized soul. And where have I ever seen one of those? Came to my own city, for Christ's sakes, for Ramakrishna's sakes. So I need to get my arm out there, roll up my sleeves, just like I did 2 days ago when I had blood taking, from my doctor there. I looked at it, saw the needle go in, saw the red blood coming out. Beautiful. If I was a kid, I would have gone like this. But I faced off with those fears, you see. It's just a body, just a little prick. So that injection of Atma Gyan serum, that's like a penultimate, maybe even an ultimate attainment, because that will introduce you to the doctor of Ishvara and the medical staff of rishis and the healer called the guru. So this is a chart. I've never gone through this thoroughly. I showed it recently. It's not in the Footfalls book, for instance, and we took it and looked at it at one seminar at once. But you can see how it really goes hand in hand with dissolving things. If you, or Avadhut's mention of I am free of ignorance, right? I am free of ignorance. So this is what he means by that. And the final quote down here, you say, by Lord Vashishta says, embodied souls are really Atman, have arrived at their present condition of suffering due to want of spiritual wisdom and the proper discrimination leading to it. Due to that lack, they have entered into the arena of relative existence with the inability to control their senses. This leads to an increase of both desire and egotism. The consorting of these two foster agyana, that's ignorance, or avidya, the presence of root ignorance that is the cause for all diseases. Lord Vashishta. Really like the way Lord Vashishta puts these teachings in that context. He goes back to this place of how I got here. And he says, for those beings who are born on earth, then, the first disease is lack of discrimination. It says, all diseases are in the mind. He starts out saying, all diseases are in the mind. But if you go to earth with the mind complex, which you'll need to have, then you should make sure that discrimination between the real and the unreal, or between true health and disease, is strong in you. Otherwise, it will turn into this problem of egotism and problems of relative existence growing, basically because of the inability to control the senses. So they just let their senses run wild. It's also one of the earliest premises of yoga, isn't it? Sense control. They want that first and foremost. Patanjali, the father of yoga. So whether you go to Vedanta and it shows you about the senses and how to control them and where they come from, or you go to teachings of Lord Vashishta and he tells you about the process of how ignorance settles in when only Atman is there, because you notice how he starts it off. All souls are Atman. That's Gaudapada's take too in non-duality, Advaita Vedanta. He says, all beings are by nature perfect, he says. But they fall into imperfection by dreaming of it, by thinking about it. They brood on it. So back here to this disease of forgetfulness again, that's kind of mixed in with all of these. We have to spend some time, who am I, right? Who am I? You can't just say who, sound like an owl after a while. You have to really say this question with intensity, and think about it. Who am I? It couldn't be this body, and so forth and so on, until you really come upon the answer to that question within yourself and wake up to that fact. Then live in that and teach it to others, as Swami Sheshanandaji says. It has to be passed on to other beings too. So because of our time has run out, we will next time maybe look at the third eye that I chanted at the beginning of the class, which he mentions here. I am the third eye, when he sings to us, verse 28, 29, 30 was it, of this time, which I have to remember so I can start off on the next verse when we get into our final classes of this, because we're reaching towards the 40th and final verse of the Avadhut. Then we can look back on this whole series, which has been recorded, and take it as our own personal retreat or seminar at home, and pause and think about all this wisdom that the Avadhut and other great souls have given us. Gyanamritam samarasam gaganopamoham Gyanamritam Samarasam Gaganopamoham Matasham Sundari Ramchandra Pituge Jagadamba Bhavatarini Uterile Navade Agahana Krishna Saptami Dina Punita Gururvar Hua Sharda Kaparama Karunamaya Avatar Hua Sharda Kaparama Karunamaya Avatar Karunamaya